Welcome back to Historical Veracity, and you're tuned into episode 4 of our series, Faith in the Age of Knowledge. Today, we delve deep into the complex relationship between science, societal constructs, and the infinite expanse of data that challenges our capacity to comprehend and control it. Despite the boundless flow of information, it's our societal and cultural frameworks that ultimately navigate this vast sea of knowledge. Contrary to Francis Bacon, the father of empiricism, who portrayed the scientific method as free from personal bias and ideology, an embodiment of objectivity, some philosophers of science argue from a standpoint of social constructivism. They highlight how research interests, such as nuclear and space exploration during the Cold War, are culturally contingent. They also contend that the interpretation of data is not straightforward, but is determined through negotiation among researchers within their social and cultural views. For instance, Paul Forman suggested that quantum theory's departure from traditional concepts like causality was a response to the disdain for scientific rationalism, embracing mystical and spiritual ideas prevalent in the Weimar Republic of the 1920s. Thomas Kuhn, in The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, discussed how scientific progress is marked by the succession of scientific paradigms that influence its development. Each generation of scientists operates within a specific paradigm, struggling to break free until a new generation ushers in a paradigm shift, leading to a wave of new scientific discoveries. Kuhn also explored the origins of the initial paradigm in any scientific field and the nature of research before its development. Max Planck famously said, "A new scientific truth does not triumph by convincing its opponents and making them see the light, but rather because its opponents eventually die, and a new generation grows up that is familiar with it." This quote underscores the generational shift necessary for scientific truths to be widely accepted. Recent years have showcased the struggle of Professor Dan Shechtman to gain recognition for his discovery of quasi-crystals. Like the clergy who refused to look through Galileo's telescope, a whole generation of scholars mocked and dismissed Shechtman, refusing to look through his microscope. Yet, ultimately, truth prevailed, and his discovery was honored with a Nobel Prize. Chemist and philosopher Michael Polanyi, in his 1958 book Personal Knowledge, criticized the prevailing view that the scientific method is entirely objective and produces objective knowledge. He argued that scientists must act on personal interest in assessing facts and deciding which scientific questions to pursue, which they indeed do in practice. Professor Zeev Bachar, in his book 3 Copernican Revolutions, analyzes 3 major scientific revolutions, showing how each was facilitated by breaking away from sterile philosophical nitpicking and boldly venturing into the unknown on the wings of intuition, yielding a functioning and effective method devoid of a philosophical foundation, unlike the philosophically perfect but practically fruitless theories that existed during those revolutions. In Ignorance: How It Drives Science, Stuart Firestein argues that ignorance is a driving force in scientific inquiry. Acknowledging from the outset his provocative use of the word ignorance, he describes it as highlighting shared knowledge gaps. Where information systems fail to provide clear answers, there arises a need to explore openly. The 1990s saw intense debates among philosophers of science and scientists themselves, dubbed the Science Wars. While the fervent debate has cooled, the general consensus lies somewhere in the middle, acknowledging that science does not operate on abstract principles alone, and changes in accepted views are not driven solely by pure data. It is often said that science advances on 2 legs, one being theory and the other experiment, yet its march is less a confident stride and more a stumbling gait. Scientific development is influenced by intellectual fashions. The first step was taken by the theoreticians, followed by the observations of the amateur astronomer. Professor Timothy Ferris, From Childhood to the Milky Way, p. 128. This idea is merely a proposal that cannot be derived from any other principle. Similar to any other scientific theory, it may initially be presented for aesthetic or metaphysical reasons. Stephen Hawking, A Brief History of Time, p. 132. In upcoming episodes, we will demonstrate with current data how a method that deals with data collection, precise analysis, and peer-reviewed publication leaves such a wide margin that it casts a shadow over entire domains in our information systems. Join us as we continue to explore the intricate dance between faith and knowledge in this age of information. Stay tuned for the next episode of Faith in the Age of Knowledge, where we'll further unravel the threads of this fascinating dialogue.